Hello, I am posting a video today, even though it's Monday and I usually post them on Tuesdays, because your report or part 2 of your formal report is due tonight, and I have graded, let's say, 3/4 of the of part 1 of the formal report, and overall they were very good, but there was a few that weren't so great, and the ones that weren't done very well were, how can I say this, very basic errors that could have been avoided. The number one issue I saw with reports that did not receive a good grades was formatting. So there were some that I received where, let's say, the introduction was not at all formatted properly. Like, not at all, not even close to the way it's described in the book. There were other reports that didn't even contain the parts that were supposed to be contained in what you turned in. So it's super important when you turn in part 2 of the formal report tonight that it contains all of the sections that it should contain, as identified in chapter 18 of the textbook, also as identified in the Canvas assignment, and also as identified by me in the Unit 5 lecture. I'm also going to just briefly list the different parts of the part 2 of the report that you're turning in tonight, and I'm going to briefly go over each section and how it should be formatted. Now, I also want to say that you should definitely go to chapter 18 in the textbook and look at what it says about each of these sections and how it should be formatted. You can also go to the Unit 5 lecture where I went over this, but I would say use this video now as your guide to make sure that you are going in the right direction, and that I would double check everything with the textbook. So again, this is in the interest of you getting the best possible grade. Please make sure that what you turn in, that you're turning in what you're supposed to be turning in, what the assignment asks for, okay? So and I'm about to go over it. So part 2 of the report, which you're turning in tonight, it should have these sections. It should have, sorry, I lost my page. It should have a title page. Okay, so the title page does not have a page number on it, but if it did, it would count as the first page in the report. And if it did, it would be written as a lowercase Roman numeral, but there's no page number on the title page. The title page also contains the title of the report in all caps, and then it will say prepared by, and then your name, and then it says prepared for. That's the person you're preparing the report for. It could be me, it could be Elon Musk, it could be a hypothetical person in a scenario that you created for this assignment. And then you also want to list the date the report is submitted, because this is letting the recipient know that the report is being submitted on or before the date that it was promised. Okay, next comes the letter of authorization. Now, you don't have to have a letter of authorization, but you might have a letter of authorization. How do you decide? Well, if your report was commissioned, then it has a letter of authorization, and the letter of authorization is simply the letter that commissioned the report, and it consists of 3 parts, typically broken down into 3 paragraphs. The opening paragraph, the first paragraph, has the background or reasons why the report was commissioned. The second paragraph has a description of commission, date, and a description of the commission, and also it lists the date the report should be submitted by. And then the third paragraph has a positive closing with contact information. Now, next, the third item that should be in part 2 of the formal report is the letter of transmittal. So everyone is going to have a letter of transmittal. The letter of transmittal has 3 main parts, which again are typically in 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph, now also I should say that you're going to create a proper letterhead. So you can look in the textbook if you don't remember what that is, but it should have your address and contact information, as well as the address and contact information of the recipient. And then it will consist of these 3 parts or 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph explains what the report is about and announces that it is ready on or before the date promised. The second paragraph summarizes concisely but in detail the report's recommendations. In the third paragraph, thanks the people who commissioned the report and helped write it, and suggests further steps if necessary. So next comes the table of contents. So unless your report is very, very, very short, and by that I mean 4 or 5 pages, your report will have a table of contents. The table of contents should take up a whole page. Even if there aren't enough entries to fill a page, there should be nothing else on the page. So let's see, the page number goes in the footer, and it should be in Roman numeral, lowercase, and let's see, you can format the entries. They can be single space or double space. That's entirely up to you. And it should list all of the sections in the report, but it doesn't list the table of contents, so it doesn't list itself. Moving on, next you have the list of figures, and this would be where in the report you can find charts, tables, graphs, pictures. So any visual aids that are in your report, because they help to support your research and analysis, will be listed in the list of figures. Now, I received an email from a student asking, does your report have to have graphs, charts, and pictures? So here's my answer. Ideally, yes, your report would have these, would have some visual aids, whether charts, graphs, photos, pictures, illustrations. Now, I understand that, you're working. I understand that you may not be able to find a chart or a graph that goes with this hypothetical scenario you've created for your paper. So let's say you make a pretty solid effort looking for charts, graphs, tables, etc., and you are just not able to find any. I understand. You could also try adding pictures or photos or illustrations in that case. Like if you can't find any charts, graphs, tables, maybe you can add some photos. But if you're unable to find anything, you're not going to have a list of figures. And I would just, if I were you, include a note for me either when you turn it in on Canvas or somewhere in the actual report. Write me a little note saying that you tried, but you could not find any charts, any graphs, any photos, any pictures that were relevant in helping to support your research and your findings. So that way I know that you made the effort, and I know that you're aware that that these things should be in the report, okay? So moving on, after the list of figures, we have sometimes called an executive summary. I have more often seen it referred to as an abstract. So the abstract is important. So I haven't really read these yet because you weren't supposed to turn it in yet, but there were a few students who submitted it. I don't know if that was accidentally or there were a few students who submitted it last week, so I have read a few. So I'll tell you what I encountered so you can hopefully use the mistakes of these students to your advantage and not make the same mistakes. I read some abstracts that did not at all go with the report. So the abstract is supposed to be a detailed but concise summary of the report. So it should reflect the rest of the report. One abstract I read didn't fit with the rest of the report at all. I don't know if the student had intended to go in one direction and then change their mind, but yeah, the abstract didn't match with the rest of the report at all. So your abstract, to be clear, needs to be a summary of the rest of the report. You can copy or lift language from other places in your report and repeat them in the abstract. Like you can take a whole sentence or two sentences and word for word copy them in the abstract. Now, how long is the abstract? The abstract should be approximately 1/10 the length of the report. So if your report is 10 pages, the abstract should be 1 page. If your report is 20 pages, the abstract should be 2. Again, you want the abstract to provide the most specific and precise information possible without going over the page or the length. Let's see. The abstract should also contain brief background and an abbreviated version of your data and your conclusions and recommendations. Now, after the abstract comes the introduction, the mode of analysis, the analysis of data, but you turned those sections in last week. So you're not going to turn them in tonight. You're going to skip over to conclusions. That will be the next section that you turn in tonight. The conclusions section offers a detailed discussion of what you have concluded from your research. So a detailed discussion. It should begin with a brief discussion of the background of the issue or problem, and that is to provide context so that your conclusions make sense. And your conclusions section should also include the recommendations. Now, the next section is the recommendations section. And the book describes recommendations section as, quote, a short, snappy version of the conclusion in a bulleted listed format. So, does that mean that the recommendation section is the same as the conclusion? No, it's not the same. It is very similar. So it contains all of the major points you make in conclusions. However, that information or those points are communicated in list format. And let's see, I have something else that I wanted to say about the conclusion. Oh, yes. So this is an important distinction between the conclusion and recommendations. In the conclusions section, each conclusion is described in greater detail than it is in the recommendations section. So the main thing that differentiates conclusions from recommendations is the formatting. Recommendations is in a bulleted list, and then there is much greater detail in the conclusions section. So after recommendations, the next section is the appendices, and let's see. So that is where you put any raw data or any information that is just, it wouldn't be appropriate elsewhere in the report, but it is something that you used, you would like your reader to be aware of it. So it could be, let's say if you conducted a survey, you could include the actual survey itself to give your audience a sense of the questions that participants were asked. Let's see, and oh, if you do have an appendices section, each appendix, no matter how short, has its own page with a title that explains it. Okay, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And then last but not least is your references or works cited page. And this should be pretty easy because you've turned this in already. So that's it. I just wanted to post this for you because there were some mistakes in part one of the formal report which I thought could have been avoided, and I'm hoping that you will all avoid these same mistakes by turning in part two tonight with all of the proper components and by properly formatting all of them. So that's it. I look forward. Well, you're doing great. And well, have a good night. Bye.